In this lecture, we shift focus from the structures and expectations of higher education to the students themselves, what they bring into the learning situation, and how that shapes learning outcomes. Students are not empty vessels. They arrive with prior knowledge, motivations, expectations, habits, and emotional experiences that influence how they engage with teaching. Research shows that these characteristics interact dynamically with the teaching-learning environment. Our task as teachers is therefore not only to present content, but to design learning environments that support students' intellectual and emotional development over time. In this lecture, we will explore how student characteristics influence learning, the role of motivation and engagement, different approaches to learning, intellectual development, and conceptions of knowledge, the relationship between formal and informal learning. What this means for teaching practice. The goal is to better understand how teaching can support diverse students in becoming confident, independent learners. After reviewing societal expectations of formal teaching, we now shift focus to what students themselves bring to learning. In mass higher education, knowing our students has become increasingly complex. Student numbers continue to grow, access is widening, and classrooms are more diverse than ever academically, culturally, and internationally. University teachers must support large and diverse cohorts, often without proportional increases in teaching resources. While curricula have expanded to meet globalization and labor market demands, they have remained largely Western-oriented, missing opportunities for deeper multicultural integration. As a result, teachers often rely on students' own motivation and intelligence to bridge the gap between their backgrounds and academic expectations. Research in higher education shows that student learning is influenced by presage variables, the characteristics students bring with them. According to John Biggs, these input factors shape learning processes and ultimately outcomes. However, these relationships are complex, as student characteristics interact dynamically with the learning environment provided by teachers and institutions, a point also emphasized by Albert Bandura. Key characteristics include prior knowledge, abilities, motivation, conceptions of learning, study approaches, and expectations. These are shaped by earlier educational experiences and continuously interact with both physical and virtual learning environments. Since students move fluidly between real and digital spaces, defining the learning environment becomes increasingly difficult. This raises an important question: how much of that environment is the teacher responsible for? Student engagement refers to the emotional and motivational energy students bring to their studies. A key concept is self-efficacy, students' belief in their ability to manage and regulate their own learning. In a digital society, students often feel confident using the internet, but this confidence does not automatically transfer to academic learning. To succeed, they must develop self-regulated learning skills within formal education. Teachers play a crucial role in fostering self-efficacy by creating structured, challenging environments where students see competence as something that can grow through effort. Students' motivation can be intrinsic interest in the subject itself, or extrinsic focus on rewards such as career opportunities. Most students combine these motivations. Motivation is not fixed. It develops through interaction with the course, institution, and broader life context. Teaching can shape motivation by helping students balance intellectual curiosity with vocational and personal goals. Students bring diverse backgrounds and emotional experiences to university. Some may feel alienated or unsure how to approach academic work, especially if they lack prior academic culture. Support is most effective when embedded in teaching itself, not as something extra. Explicit modeling of academic thinking, clarity of expectations, and a sense of belonging can transform students' confidence in study strategies. Research shows that engagement increases when teaching demands and supports higher-level learning. Active learning, collaboration, academic challenge, and meaningful teacher-student interaction all promote deeper understanding. Teaching influences engagement by shaping how students interpret expectations, apply effort, and develop understanding. By nurturing, challenging, and supporting students, teachers directly affect their emotional and academic development. Research on intellectual characteristics shows that what students know is shaped by how they understand knowledge itself. William Perry's longitudinal research identified a developmental progression in students' thinking. Students often move from a dualistic view, where knowledge is right or wrong and authority holds the answers, to recognizing multiple perspectives, and eventually to a relativistic view, where knowledge is contextual and requires personal commitment. Importantly, development is not linear. Students may regress depending on teaching context. Those with a dualistic orientation often expect teachers to reduce complexity and define correct answers. More advanced students see knowledge as something to interpret and apply responsibly in context. Studies show that project-based and contextualized teaching benefits all students, but sustained exposure is required to support long-term development. Intellectual growth is shaped by the opportunities teaching provides. It cannot be forced, only enabled. Research comparing disciplines shows that students' views of knowledge vary across subject areas. In science and engineering, teaching often emphasizes correct answers and established knowledge, which may reinforce dualistic thinking. In contrast, humanities and social sciences more explicitly engage with multiple perspectives and contextual interpretation. Interestingly, students may hold different epistemological orientations in different subjects at the same time. Intellectual development is therefore not a fixed trait, but shaped by teaching style and disciplinary practice. This highlights an important point. Education should aim to develop contextualized, critical understanding across disciplines. However, this cannot be achieved through didactic instruction alone. Teachers must design environments where students are ready to rethink their assumptions and gradually take responsibility for their knowledge. Research on approaches to learning identifies three main patterns: deep, surface, and strategic. A deep approach focuses on understanding, critical thinking, and connecting ideas. A surface approach focuses on memorization and reproduction without understanding. A strategic approach focuses on achievement, organization, and performance. Students' approaches are not fixed traits. They adapt to their perception of the teaching and assessment environment. A mismatch between teaching style and learning preference may feel uncomfortable, but it can promote development. Effective teaching balances support and challenge. Ultimately, students' perceptions of the learning environment strongly influence the quality of learning achieved. The teaching-learning environment plays a central role in shaping student learning. Research shows that student-oriented teaching approaches are more likely to foster deep learning. Students continuously adjust their study strategies based on how teaching and assessment are designed. Effective teaching methods guide students toward independence, place knowledge in meaningful contexts, stretch them beyond preferred learning habits, and promote reflection and self-regulation. Teachers are therefore responsible not only for delivering subject knowledge, but for designing environments that support intellectual maturation over time. Development cannot be imposed, but it can be nurtured through thoughtful pedagogical design. As teachers, we design formal learning environments, but students learn in many other contexts beyond the institution. Today, social technologies increasingly blur the boundaries between formal and informal learning. The key distinction is between formal learning, structured, systematic, and mediated by teachers, and informal learning, spontaneous, experience-based, and self-directed. Lev Vygotsky argued that formal learning involves scientific concepts that are systematic and require mediation by a teacher. In contrast, everyday concepts develop spontaneously through experience. Although different, these two forms of learning are interdependent and influence each other. Formal learning gives students access to organized disciplinary knowledge through language, explanation, and dialogue. But this process is complex. Academic knowledge is built from expert models developed over generations, and it cannot simply be transmitted by telling. Language alone is not enough. Teaching requires structured support. Formal learning is challenging because it deals with second-order knowledge, descriptions of the world developed by experts, rather than direct personal experience. For example, everyday understanding of force comes naturally through experience, but grasping the Newtonian concept of force requires structured guidance. Our brains evolved to support experiential learning, not necessarily abstract, scientific reasoning. This is why formal education requires more than books or lectures. As Roger Sellier explains, institutional learning provides a systematic shortcut to insights that would rarely develop without guided support. Teaching, sometimes called pedagogy or learning design, is therefore essential. Even though digital technologies connect formal and informal environments, their intellectual boundaries remain. Teachers must help students bridge these contexts, drawing on informal experiences while guiding them toward systematic understanding. In designing courses and teaching, we must recognize that students bring characteristics that shape how teaching is experienced. These characteristics act as a filter between our intentions and actual learning outcomes. Emotional engagement, prior experiences, and motivation all interact dynamically with teaching practices. Students are more likely to achieve higher-level learning outcomes when teaching explicitly models collaboration, critical thinking, and practical application. Emotional engagement is influenced by how teachers foster belonging, interaction, and group cohesion. Students' intellectual characteristics are shaped by prior education, but continue to evolve within the current learning environment. Effective teaching stretches students beyond their existing approaches and supports reflection and self-regulation. Teachers guide students from reliance on authority toward personal responsibility for knowledge. Students also bring informal learning experiences, skills, and motivations. By connecting formal education to real-world and technological contexts, teachers help students apply knowledge meaningfully. Although development varies across individuals, research consistently shows that teaching strongly influences both intellectual and emotional growth, shaping students into confident, independent learners.